The sun was just kissing the rooftops of Florence, setting the city aglow in buttery gold. Eva stood at the end of Via della Mosaico, her fingers twitching as she eyed the blank, crumbling wall. It was the perfect canvas, if only it were hers. Eva sighed, pulling her hair into a messy knot. Florence felt both achingly familiar and impossibly new. She'd left 6 years ago, chasing art and adventure across continents, but home never loosens its grip. Now the city seemed to whisper her name. Just then, a sweet, trembling note cut through the warm air. She turned and saw him, a young man standing with his violin, case open for coins, a look of concentration pinching his brow. He paused, locking eyes with her for an electric second. "Not a bad spot for an audience, is it?" he called, voice lilting with humor. His Italian accent danced along the edges of his words. Eva smirked. Not a bad spot for inspiration either. He gave a little bow, the corner of his mouth curling up. "I'm Luca. You must be the new muralist everyone's whispering about. Reckon you'll turn that old wall into a masterpiece?" She shrugged, shoulders tensing. "If I get the grant, maybe." Heard their stiff competition. He played a teasing trill on the violin. "And they say musicians are dramatic. Maybe you've heard there's a violinist up for the same grant. Some people say he's brilliant, or maybe just stubborn." She laughed, warm and surprised. "Well, may the best artist win. Or maybe we both lose spectacularly." Eva didn't know what to expect from Florence this time, but as she moved to leave, Luca's music followed her down the alley, a melody full of promises and challenges. Over her shoulder, Eva caught his gaze still lingering. Something told her that this was the start of far more than a competition. The next morning, Eva reached for her sketchbook as the city came alive, echoing with Vespa engines and distant church bells. She perched on a marble bench in the shadow of the Palazzo Vecchio, drawing quick lines and broad sweeps. She had to impress the Brandt panel, but her hand shook with nerves she hadn't felt since her student days. A familiar sound stopped her pencil, a gentle, haunting melody, floating in from the other side of the piazza. She squinted against the bright Florentine sun to see Luca, violin tucked under his chin, drawing a crowd with his music. He played as if every note belonged not just to him, but to the city itself. After a while, Luca nodded to the crowd and let the last note linger before he made his way over. "Seeing you again? I must be lucky. Did you draw me?" Eva smirked. "Your hair, maybe. It's impossible to ignore." He ruffled it and grinned. "A long time ago. My mother said only artists have wild hair. Maybe that's why I avoid a haircut." His playful confidence crackled in the air, but in his eyes, Eva saw shadows, a loneliness that matched her own. He glanced at a mural in progress nearby. "That's where the grant panel is meeting. Tomorrow, right? I suppose we're both nervous?" Eva nodded, hugging her sketchbook. "I feel like the city's watching. My whole family still lives here. The pressure." Luca sat beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance. "Let's make a bargain. I'll play for you tonight. Just for you. No crowds. You tell me what Florence means to you, as one who left and then returned. Maybe we'll both find inspiration, or at least a distraction." She studied him, her competitive edge softening. "Deal. But only if you teach me something about violin. I haven't held one since I was 12. I promise. I was awful." "Then you're braver than I am," he admitted softly. "Meet me in the sunlit alley dusk. Ava agreed, heart racing with curiosity. She tried to tell herself this was just for the grant. But as the sunlight danced in the corners of the city, a new feeling began to take root. One that made her look forward to dusk more than she cared to admit. Dusk draped Florence in a patchwork of gold and rose as Ava navigated cobbled alleys toward the rendezvous. Her heart beat double time, the anticipation hovering somewhere between excitement and nerves. When she arrived, Luca was already there, seated on the stoop beneath a street lamp, whose light-streaked patterns across his violin case. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he admitted, standing to greet her. She shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. "I love this alley. My grandmother used to bring me gelato here when I was little. Funny, it hasn't changed a bit." He smiled as if he knew all her secrets. "Neither have you, maybe. Sit?" She obliged, perching beside him as he propped his violin between them. "So, the concert?" Luca lifted his bow. "No grand stages tonight, just a serenade between the echoes." He began to play, a song Ava didn't know, heartbreakingly sweet, lingering in the small alley like a wish whispered on the wind. As his bow danced, her worries melted. When he finished, the silence was thick with something unspoken. "Your turn," Luca nudged. "What does Florence mean to you?" Ava hesitated, cheeks coloring. "It's messy. Beautiful, yes, but complicated. When I was young, I wanted to paint dreams no one else saw. I left so I wouldn't get stuck in a life that someone else planned. But now," she let her gaze travel along the weathered walls. "Maybe the dreams never fit Florence's frame. Or maybe I need to try again." Luca studied her, understanding flickering in his eyes. "That's what music feels like to me. Like I don't quite belong unless I play." He handed her the instrument, and she cradled it awkwardly, laughing at her own clumsy grip. "Go easy on me," she pleaded. He leaned in, gently guiding her fingers. "Always." As she drew the bow, producing a squeak rather than a note, they both burst out laughing. Their eyes met, and in that quick, sparkling moment, something familiar yet exhilarating passed between them. A connection joyful and raw. Against the backdrop of Florence's painted corners, their rivalry faded to a memory, replaced by the promise glimmering brightly in the sunlit alley. The morning of the grant presentation arrived, the air buzzing with hope and nerves. Ava woke before dawn, her mind replaying Luca's music and laughter from the night before. Briefly, she wondered if her art would ever truly matter, if it could touch someone the way his music had touched her. She stood before the wall she hoped to transform, paints and brushes arrayed at her feet. Across the piazza, Luca was tuning his violin. His presence, once that of a rival, now felt steady and oddly comforting. But as the grant committee assembled, reality set in. There could only be one winner. Luca caught her gaze, winked and whispered, "Show them what Florence looks like through your eyes." Ava sucked in a breath and started to paint, her strokes bold and deliberate. She lost herself in colors, saffron, ochre, turquoise, willing her mural to pulse with the stories and secrets of the city. She tried to paint loneliness, hope, and the spark of new connections. Every line, every shape, held a piece of her heart. Meanwhile, Luca closed his eyes and let his violin sing. The melody wound around the alley, swirling with Ava's splashes of color. The judges couldn't decide where to look, at the wall alive with Ava's vision, or at the young artist pulling ancient longing from his strings. Afterward, as the crowd's applause faded, Ava and Luca found a quiet pocket near the river. They each pretended not to be breathless with waiting. "Maybe tonight you'll win," Ava teased, her voice low. He shook his head, grinning despite the tension. "Maybe neither of us will. Maybe the judges pick that sculptor from Rome instead." She nudged him with her shoulder, and together they watched the sunlight ripple on the water. The rivalry was still there, but softer now, threaded with possibility. He said quietly, "No matter who they choose, your art changed this city, and so did you." Before Ava could reply, one of the judges approached, envelope in hand. Luca's hand brushed hers in silent encouragement. The words inside would change everything. But for that moment, surrounded by the golden air and the echo of music, they were simply two artists, daring to hope for more than just a victory. The envelope trembled in Ava's hands. She half expected her heart to spill right out along with the results. Luca watched her, chin lifted with false bravado, but his left hand drumming anxiously against his violin case. "Open it together?" he suggested, tilting his head with an encouraging smile. She gave a shaky laugh. "If it's bad news, we can both run away to Venice and start a street band." Luca grinned. "Only if you promise to paint my violin bright blue." They shared a nervous look, then peeled open the envelope. Ava read aloud, her voice wavering. "The Florence Creative Grant is hereby awarded to Ava Rossi for her transformative mural honoring the city's heritage and spirit." Her breath caught. Part of her wanted to celebrate, but another part ached for Luca, who flashed a crooked smile. "Well," he said, "I guess my blue violin will have to wait." Ava reached for his hand. "Luca, your music made them stop and feel everything." "I wish." He squeezed her hand gently. "Don't. You deserve it. That's what this wall needed. Besides, maybe I didn't win the grant, but I found a new way to love Florence again." His words lingered between them, carrying truth and a twinge of sorrow. The celebrations spilled out through the piazza. But for Ava, nothing felt complete without Luca beside her. That evening, under strings of lantern lights, crowds gathered to admire Ava's mural. People snapped photos, children danced, and old women wiped away tears. Luca played across the square, his music rising like a hopeful plea against the hum of celebration. Ava drifted away from the adoration, her feet carrying her instinctively toward Luca. She watched him play in the shifting glow of the lanterns. Each note seemed to search for her, call to her. As his song ended, she approached, her voice nearly lost in the commotion. "This wall, these colors, they only matter because you reminded me how to see Florence." Luca gazed back, eyes soft, resigned, yet shining with something that made Ava's chest ache. For the first time since coming home, she felt torn between her dream achieved and a new possibility just out of reach. As the crowd celebrated around them, the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what either of them would say or do next. Days passed, but for Ava and Luca, the city's celebrations seemed to blur into routine. Florence still shone, her mural, a destination for tourists and locals alike. Yet every glance at the painted wall reminded Ava of the moment she had won and the silent understanding with Luca that had followed. One evening, Ava found herself alone by the Arno. She watched reflections ripple over the water, replaying every laugh, every note, every promise left unsaid. Though winning had been her lifelong dream, tonight it felt strangely hollow. Suddenly, footsteps echoed softly behind her. Luca's silhouette joined hers, framed by orange streetlight. "You always escape to the river when you want to disappear?" he teased, gentleness threading through his words. She tried to smile. "It's the only place quiet enough to hear what I'm thinking." He sat beside her, silence stretching warm and comfortable between them. "Ava, what are you really thinking?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "I'm proud. I am. But it all feels unfinished. Like the city gave me its heart, but I left something important behind." Luca hummed softly, eyes fixed on the dark water. "Florence is full of second chances. Maybe you didn't leave anything behind. Maybe you just haven't found it yet." Ava turned, wanting him to see the truth in her face. "I miss us. The team we became, the music, the painting. It was more than just competition, Luca. It made everything brighter." He searched her face, hope flickering beneath the sadness. "It's not too late, you know. I'd rather make art together than win any award. But you have to say you want it too." Ava faltered for only a heartbeat. "I do. I want us. I want to see what we can create, you and me. Florence and her alleys, music and color." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle and warm. The promise was unspoken, but undeniable. Together. They gazed out at the river, letting the city's lights stitch their dreams quietly back together, piece by hopeful piece. Ava and Luca's new beginning was not born from grand declarations, but from small, everyday wonders. Their days took on a gentle rhythm, Ava painting details high on her mural's corner, while Luca, perched on a low wall, sent music swirling up to meet her. Their rivalry slipped away until it felt like a story they had made up. One radiant afternoon, the pair wandered through the outdoor market near Piazza Santo Spirito. Ava's fingers, forever searching for colors in the world, hovered over tubs of fresh pigments, while Luca haggled for a street sandwich, grinning at her over the heads of market-goers. "Do you think people look at us and see two crazy artists or two fools in love?" Luca teased, as they sat beneath a striped awning, sharing bread and secrets. Ava snorted, dabbing mustard from his chin. "I think they see two people who finally figured it out." He brushed her hand, his thumb tracing lazy circles on her wrist. "Sometimes I wonder if dreaming too big means we miss what matters most right in front of us." She met his gaze, heartbeat skipping. "Dreams are better when you have someone to share them with." But soon, cracks threatened their newfound joy. That evening, an urgent email pulled Ava away. A prominent gallery in Berlin was offering her a residency, a chance to show her work far beyond Florence, something she'd once desperately wanted. Ava read the letter twice, the old thrill surging inside her. Yet she hesitated, picturing Luca and the winding city alleys. Before she could decide, she received a text from him. "Meet me in the sunlit alley. I have news too." Heart racing, she hurried through the tangle of streets. When she found Luca, he was sitting against the old mural wall, his eyes alight with hope and uncertainty. He didn't let her speak first. "I was offered a seat with the chamber orchestra in Rome," he blurted, voice shaking with unspent joy. "A dream come true, if I choose to go." For a long second, they just stared at each other, caught between the thrill of fresh dreams and the ache of possibly letting go. The sun cast their shadows together on the alley wall, entwined and inseparable, even as the city seemed to hold its breath for their answer. The world suddenly felt too small and impossibly vast at once. Berlin, Rome, each promise tempting, each possibility weighted with risk. Ava and Luca lingered in the alley as day shifted toward evening, the city humming with life just out of sight. Ava finally broke the silence. "What do we do, Luca? If we chase these dreams, do we lose this? Whatever this is?" Luca rested his violin beside him, his eyes gentle but troubled. "You always said you wanted to paint for the world. I always wanted to play for more than just open piazzas." He reached for her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "But what if the world just means chasing each other across continents? Is that enough?" Ava's voice wavered. "Could it be? Or are we just asking for heartbreak?" He tried to smile. "Maybe all good things come with a little risk. But I don't want to hold you back. I don't want Florence to be the only corner where you find joy. And I don't want to be the reason you turn down Rome," Ava said softly, emotion thickening her words. "What are we supposed to do, Luca?" The ache of unspoken choices settled between them. Together they wandered, city lights flickering overhead. Finally, Luca stopped beneath the archways of the old bridge. Music shops shuttered for the evening. "Let's not decide tonight," he whispered. "Let's have one more night in our city. Play and paint and laugh. Maybe tomorrow the answers will seem clearer." Ava nodded, wiping away a tear she hadn't known was there. Hand in hand they melted into the golden maze of Florence, determined to savor every moment. Their laughter echoed through the alleys, a counterpoint to the worries clutching at their hearts. Uncertainty tangled with hope. Neither realized that Florence, with her sunlit corners and hidden music, was about to give them one last chance to trust in love's own design. That night, Florence transformed. Ava and Luca wandered the narrow streets, every step heavy, yet filled with meaning. Old friends called their names, market vendors waved, and even the street cats seemed to pause to watch them. The city wrapped them in warmth, a living witness to their dreams and doubts. They found themselves back at Ava's mural. Under the silver hush of moonlight, the colors looked different, softer, like a memory already. Luca placed his violin at her feet and gently guided her in a shaky waltz across the empty piazza. No music played but their laughter and whispers. "I wish we could stay like this forever," Ava admitted, head resting on his shoulder. "But life keeps pulling us in different directions." Luca's fingers trembled on her back. "Maybe Florence is trying to teach us something, that love finds a way, even in sunlit alleys and moonlit piazzas." She looked up, searching his face. "What if we say yes? To the residency? To Rome? What if we're brave enough to chase it all and trust that love is strong enough to follow?" He wiped a tear from her cheek. "I want to believe that. I want to believe that every city could be ours if we were together. A sudden commotion, neighbors joining in their impromptu dance, a familiar barista passing by with congratulations, the old muralist who inspired Ava as a child, giving her a proud nod. Joy spread in ripples. Laughter bubbling between strangers and friends. The city itself seemed to be nudging them forward. By the river, they sat quietly, breathing in the cool night. Ava laced her fingers with his. What if this is just the start, Luca? What if Florence was never about staying, but about showing us how to dream together? Luca smiled, hope bright in his eyes. Then tomorrow, let's write our own map. Berlin, Rome, wherever we end up, we go together. But tonight, let's make one more memory. With the dawn just a hint on the horizon, they made a promise that the alleys of Florence would always be their beginning and never their ending. The story of them was just unfolding, with one final chapter left before they leapt into the great unknown. As sunlight crept into Florence, Ava and Luca awoke to a city shimmering with possibility. They spent their last morning winding through their favorite alleys, past the sweet-smelling bakery, the mural now radiant in the golden light, the cafe where they had first traded playful jabs. Everywhere they went, Florence revealed its quiet blessings, a child chasing pigeons, a grandpa humming a tune, a bouquet of sunflowers left on a doorstep. By noon, luggage stood ready at Ava's family's doorway, one bag bound for Berlin, another for Rome. They stood facing each other, halfway between laughter and tears, surrounded by every choice and chance they'd ever wanted. Luca stroked her cheek, a soft question in his eyes. Do you think we'll regret this? Picking adventure over certainty? Ava took his hands, squeezing them tight. Maybe, but I'll regret it more if we don't try. Dreams and love, they're both worth chasing, even if it means flying in different directions for a while. He bent his forehead to hers. Then let's promise something. Wherever music and art lead us, we find each other. In every city, every letter, every song or mural. Ava smiled, her heart trembling. And Florence will always be the alley where it all began. They parted with a kiss, sweeter for the longing it promised would be brief. Ava left for the airport with sunlight on her skin and hope in her veins. Luca boarded his train later that evening, violin case gripped like a charm against homesickness. For months, love traveled between them, poem-filled postcards from Berlin cafes, scratchy phone calls across time zones, snapshots of new murals and dim-lit concerts. Distance was never easy, but the city in their memories was always waiting, a mural and a melody weaving their hearts together across miles. One spring day, exactly a year later, Ava stepped once more into the sunlit alley, suitcase in hand and paint on her fingertips. There was Luca, leaning against the old wall, violin cradled in his arms, his smile bright as the Tuscan sun. Under Florence's forgiving sky, they fell into each other's arms, no longer uncertain, no longer rivals, but the truest version of who they'd become. Side by side, hand in hand, they walked the alleys that had watched them fall in love, ready now to make wherever they stood the brightest canvas of all. And as the bells of Florence rang out, Ava and Luca's story was woven into sunlit alleys forever. Proof that sometimes love isn't about holding on tight, but about letting each other shine.